Let's go ahead and get started, guys. All right. So just really quickly, a little bit about who we are for those of you who aren't familiar. So we started this business back in 2018, and the idea was that we wanted to connect people back with these off the beaten path and authentic, immersive type of experiences as a way of preserving tradition and culture through this sort of meaningful and immersive type of travel, specifically to Italy. So, of course, Karen here was born and raised in Rome. It's where we now live with our two children. It's where most of our team is hubbed out of, and so we're continuing this mission as a DMC with a purpose, to really, you know, take people into places, especially like the Amalfi Coast, that are so overburdened by mass tourism to the point where the tourism is actually starting to dilute the very thing that people are going there to see in the first place. And by that, I mean that you go into a place like Positano in peak season, whether it be June, July, August, and you'll notice that, first of all, almost everyone around you is American, right? And so it doesn't feel like you're even in Italy anymore. It's a beautiful place, right? The architecture is gorgeous, the landscape is stunning, but it's lacking some of that depth in culture and heritage and the things that people started traveling to these small towns in the first place. These small communities were never designed to accommodate this level of tourism and this many people at once. And so we have taken it upon ourselves to really find ways of not only supporting some of the more off the beaten path accommodations, experiences, and partners that are trying to preserve things that are more traditional and authentic for their communities, but also in doing that, we're alleviating some of what's happening to some of these mass tourism places, right? So we're going to be talking a lot about some of those experiences specific to the Amalfi Coast, but I wanted to kind of explain a little bit about our mission in more depth today because it really does apply to this specific area, more than most places, right? So just keep that in mind as you're getting introduced to some of the type of experiences that is the overarching mission of what we're trying to achieve here. So again, we are a full service DMC for Italy. So we work all throughout the country. We have a wonderful team of local managers, travel designers, many of whom live and work in and around these areas that they're actually participating in the travel design of. We do extensive research and development for every single accommodation, experience, and guide that we work with. So that is not only to ensure that we have a great value alignment and that we're working with locals that are actually living and working and that those travel dollars are going to those communities that people are visiting, but it's also to make sure that we're working with folks that really understand an American audience and they understand a certain level of excellence when it comes to hospitality, because we don't believe that you have to compromise on those things to have both. So again, we vet every single accommodation, experience, and guide that we work with to make sure that that's the case. And then we do work on Travefy. So we're very familiar with that system. We find that it's a really great collaborative resource for us when it comes to working with our travel advisor partners. It's a great way for us to collaborate on travel design, and it's a great way for you guys to really see sort of the, an end result product that you can very easily transfer to your client. And of course, we can do everything white label for you as much or as little as you want. So it's very highly customizable in the way that we work with our travel advisors. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we're gonna cover. I'm excited once we get
Awesome.
to the yeah.
So most Italians have never been to the Amalfi Coast. Now, this is really interesting, right? Because you think, all right, this is one of the highest like demand destinations for at least the US market, but really around the world. To most, Western areas, this is where most of the tourism is concentrated, or at least a very, very large percentage of it that come to Italy, and for good reason. But one of the reasons, one of the issues of mass tourism that I talked about earlier, one of the byproducts of that is this massive rise in cost of living, right? All of a sudden, you've got one of the highest demand concentrated areas in the country. And what it does is it drives the prices of basically everything up, from groceries to restaurants to cafes to any type of experiences, drivers, Uber. And then you pair that with the high demand for accommodations. And what that's done is it's transitioned a lot of what used to be housing for locals into Airbnbs and short-term rentals. And so that's actually led to a situation where a lot of locals either one cannot afford to live there anymore, or two can't even afford to visit as just a holiday destination. Do you
Right.
want to expand on that? Because this has been kind of your experience living here.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the reasons why I left Rome and I came to the US, which is a story for another day. And I lived in the US for on and off about 10 years, but it was because Rome was so overcrowded, right, with tourists. Some travelers, but a lot of tourists that even going to school, going to university, going to shop, right, became such a burden. And so while Italians, generally we love American, we love the US, it's the American dream. But when you live in such a tourist hotspot, it can breed some resentment because, there's the type of travelers that come in a very respectful, open-minded way to learn and to experience. And then there's the ones that are coming and are looking for the same exact comforts that they get at home, right? But just putting kind of those high pressure demands in a different country, a new culture. So for the Amalfi Coast, I'd never been to the Amalfi Coast until I actually moved to the US, and then I started this business and I started, learning why is every American obsessed with the Amalfi Coast. I was like, I gotta go there. And now, I've been there 25 times. And every time we go back, it's what Jet was saying, 100% true. But the other part of it is that it's harder and harder to find good partners, good people when it comes to driver, when it comes to guides, because it's easy to take advantage of tourists, right? When people are willing to pay 2,000 euros for a 1-day driver to be available, but then the next person comes and pays a little bit of extra cash, now all of a sudden the DMC is short a driver, because unfortunately that's the way the Italian culture is, right? It is part of it when you live in such a hotspot where there's less opportunity for connection and meaningful slow connections with those partners. They're just looking for a quantity game, right? And so even when I scout, my partners, and they're like, you mean that you know every single driver on the Amalfi Coast you work with, and you want to come down here to meet the guy? And I'm like, yeah, I sure do. It's so new to them. Like most people, they get a request, from an agency or DMC far that may have never been there. And it is unfortunate that it's a numbers game. And when you are paying, a boat on the Amalfi Coast should not cost 4,000 euros. And so we'll get a little bit more into that, but we're so passionate about this because, I think that sometimes people think, oh, Life Beyond the Room only works in off the beaten path destinations. No, we also work in those destinations because they're actually some of the ones where we can make the biggest difference.
Yep, exactly. Great. So, the Amalfi Coast really came on the map, and it kind of has a similar story as Cinque Terre, right? Where it's sort of these very small, concentrated villages, for lack of a better term, that
fishing villages.
fishing villages, right? And they embody this sort of natural, intersection of nature and culture. And it's this beautiful place that's unlike anywhere else on earth. And the Italian Riviera, right? And it once it got on the map, right after World War II, is when people really started to kind of discover it through your public figures, right? Your artists, your poets, your writers, like people that were of high esteem that would come to these places and make a second home, where they would stay for a summer or a season, and then they would bring them back, and through popular culture, it just exploded. And so I'd say post-COVID has probably been one of the largest surges of tourism for this area. And that could probably be said for a lot of different destinations, but the Amalfi Coast was already positioned for that prior. And once that sort of pressure valve of COVID released, everybody just flocked. And so you've still got these massive concentrations of tourism here. So it's really important that we start talking through how to avoid that. Off season is one of the best ways to do it. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Prior to COVID, don't get us wrong, it was still very much a hotspot, but you talk about people that went there 15, 20 years ago and it was completely different, right? So definitely it's been post-war where we've seen this surge. So let's talk about just some technical things that would be good for everybody to know. The Amalfi Coast is not just Positano, Ravello, and Amalfi, right? It's got 50 municipalities, although and you guys will get the recording to this, so you can take a look at all of them. Out of here, people that have been to the Amalfi Coast, you've definitely passed some of those other places. One of the two of my favorites, three of my favorites are Praiano, Cetara, and Vietri sul Mare. We'll talk about some of those a little bit later, but you'll have this resource. And if you have any questions, we're happy to hop on a separate call with you. Of course, the three most known are Positano, Amalfi, and Ravello. Right, so the Amalfi Coast starts after the Sorrento, the Peninsula Sorrentina, the Sorrento Peninsula, right? And Positano is really the first bigger, nothing is big on the Amalfi Coast that you encounter, right? Then you have Traiano in the middle, then you get to Amalfi, you get to Ravello, but really the end of it, it goes from Positano all the way to Vietri sul Mare. And yeah, Sorrento, I know that, you know, when we are talking to clients, when you guys are talking to clients, Sorrento, sometimes it's a very appealing home base because it's bigger, right? It offers a lot more. Sorrento is not a part of the Amalfi Coast. If you want Mount Vesuvius views, right? It's the best place to be.
Yeah.
If you go off season and not when it's overpacked. But yeah, and during the off season, Sorrento is a great option because one, it's not going to take you 3 hours to get from Sorrento to, you know, Ravello. And two, you are going to have a little more access to some of the restaurants, some of the shops, while not having the crowd. So,
and it's also, just to piggyback on that, it's also you have access to some of your boat activities, so some of your excursions out to like a Capri or even like a transfer.
In the winter, though.
Well, in the winter maybe not, right? But you still do have a good port there as well.
Yeah. So again, these are some of our favorite times, right? This is not, you know, a rule. It's just something that we've experienced. We have personally been going back every year to the Amalfi Coast, almost always in February, and it's incredible because, you know, we've been lucky enough to get some good weather. Needless to say, right? There's no crowds, but January through March, so really before Easter, April is fine. You want to avoid the Easter times where there's a lot of, obviously, the locals, families that come by as well. And then November, right? November is also a great time to go. And, you know, during those months, you're probably wondering, isn't everything closed? Well, yes, a lot of it is, right? A lot of hotels are closed. A lot of restaurants are closed. But here's the thing, the things that are open, they're actually survived on the locals, right? On the local people that live there, which we'll get in a second to some numbers and statistics. So what are some of the advantages? If you know where to go, if you know how to find the places that are open, you know, to traveling off season, little to no traffic. I mean, this is a big one, you know, even clients that went 2 years ago, right after COVID, and clients that went this year. And I was talking to partner advisors and they were like, Karen, they were like in the car for this many hours. They did the same exact route. Because if you have been, you know, the Amalfi Coast is one road, right? Unless you want to go hike up in the mountain and reach some of the other villages. So once you get behind the tour bus, it can very quickly ruin your experience, let alone your view, right? You add to that the windy roads and you're going 5 to 10 miles an hour. You're spending your whole day in the car.
And these roads, keep in mind, were built for horses, right? And people are driving these massive, you know, buses through these tiny little streets, and they're barely squeaking through, and they're like technically two ways, but not really. But in March, we went in March and February, I could drive, like, and it took like no time to get from town to town. It really, as the crow flies, it's not that far.
Yeah. And like I said, it is not empty. During those times, it has the people that those towns were actually built for, right? It has the locals, the fishermen. You'll see people going out fishing while they turn their boats, even their small fishing boats, they'll turn them for tourism, right?
It's a different place.
It's very different place, different experience. Second biggest thing, you know, with the traffic is the prices. I mean, some hotels that are, I'm sure you guys know, like absolutely absurd, and especially this year, prices skyrocketed even from last year. If you find the places that are open, you can get them for a fraction of the cost, right? Everything, if you want to hire a driver, if the driver hasn't gone back to Naples, right, for the winter, because most of them do not live on the Amalfi Coast, they live in Naples. So another thing that we really pride ourselves in is in finding hyper local everything. You know, you're in Naples, you have your Naples driver, your Naples guide. You're on the Amalfi Coast, you need to have the Amalfi Coast driver, the Amalfi Coast guide. So the lower prices is definitely one of the biggest advantages. we've already talked about, the places being closed, so that the restaurant that you're going to stumble upon probably going to be filled with Italians, and it's open because they thrive off of the local economy and they don't rely solely on
Yeah, if you look at
tourists.
your Google Maps and like look at just the ratings for the restaurants that are open, right? Everything 4.5 and below is closed, right? So a lot of your higher rated places are still open during these off times. So that tells you a lot about who's supporting these places.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, yeah, that's also a hit or miss because some places are truly just frequented, by tourists. So some of those ratings coming, if an Italian will go there, may have a slightly different opinion than a foreigners, but that's okay. Um, a great thing that you can do off season, which is another thing that goes from this amazing experience immersed in nature to literally dodging like bullets, is hiking the full path of the gods, not just a little, 30-minute hike because then you turn around because there's too many people or it's too hot, but actually the full path of the gods hike from Nocelle or Bomerano all the way to the other side. You can even stay, like for people that are super adventurous, you can make a multiple day hike if you don't want to do the whole thing in a day and stay in some of those smaller, more off the beaten path villages. And weather. The Amalfi Coast is still considered southern Italy, and we cannot predict the weather, just like this September, where like here, it's been raining like crazy. But if the sun's shining, it's like 65 degrees and you're on the beach, on the Positano beach that you can barely even step a foot on during the peak season, you have it all to yourself. If it rains, again, it's another great opportunity for slow connection, like maybe sitting at a local cafe, mingling with the locals. And I think it's important to reemphasize the mood, right? Yes, people love the tourists because they're making a lot more money during those peak season, but the locals that actually live there all year round, like the fishermen, the farmers, the 90-year-old that's harvesting those terrace crazy landscapes that they could probably run a 10K much faster than I can. Those are the people that love when travelers are coming in off season and they're taking the time to observe, to interact, to slow down, not just to run from Positano shop to Capri shop and so forth. So let me see. Do you have any questions? Okay, then we can cover this. But great. So just some technical things. As you can see, the orange line kind of represents the 40-kilometer stretch. What is that in miles?
It's far.
Okay. Even though I spent 10 years in the US, the imperial system never made sense to me. So one of the reasons I'm glad to be back. But yeah, so it stretches from Positano to Vietri sul Mare. During peak season, I'm not kidding, it can take 3, maybe even 4 hours, to get from place to place. Because once you get stuck, sometimes you cannot even turn around unless you turn into one of those, street side hotels and make a really crazy maneuver. You're basically stuck. And again, just to put in perspective, the number of residents on the stretch of the Amalfi Coast, 38,000. Number of visitors, this is 2022, according to one of the Italian tourism entities, was 1.9 million. So yeah, you can see kind of like the whole Sorrento Peninsula. You can see where Capri is. Yes, it makes more sense to go to Capri from Sorrento versus from, the small port of Positano or Praiano or Amalfi. Okay, let's talk about Capri really quick. Capri will be very difficult to do off season because Capri during the off season is a cantiere a cielo aperto, it's a construction zone. Capri, it's a very small island, just put in perspective, is 6 times smaller than Manhattan, has number of residents year round of about 6,000, 6,800. That number is dropping year after year for some of the reasons that Jad was mentioning earlier. And during peak season, you can get, I think it's even more than 25,000, 25 to 30,000 visitors a day. And every person that gets off of Capri, unless they're doing a trick, which I'll tell you in a second, they are paying a 100 euro disembarkment fee. I forgot to translate that, which means just to get off onto the island of Capri, right? you have to pay 100 euros, which is usually paid in cash. That's something that we let, our travelers know. A trick to avoid that is to just dock up at a restaurant, right? Then you can always get a taxi or a driver to maybe go to Anacapri, go do the hike, see Monte Solaro, take the cable car, and then get back on the boat from the restaurant. So I just wanted to quickly mention Capri. If it's a beautiful day, by all means go to Capri, but we do highly advise staying on the island of Capri, right? Because the ferries thankfully do have an end time during the day. Sometimes it's depending on season, 5 p.m., 6 p.m.,
Right.
which means once the day trippers leave,
It empties out.
it empties out, and the locals actually comes out. They're having an aperitivo and a spritz, but the day tripping thing, we don't recommend it. And you can still get all the 5-star big luxury hotels are closed during the off season in Capri. Everybody's doing construction work, but you can get some nicer, higher end bed and breakfast that will be open. So, if your clients wants to go off season, keeping in mind that it's all weather dependent, right? If that ferry or boat is going to run, then suggest spending a couple days on the island, and you can pretty much have it all to yourself. We won't talk about Ischia today, that deserves a whole nother webinar, but let's get into, see if there's no questions. So let's get into some of the our favorite experiences and accommodations that you can do during the off season, right? Of course, you can do all of these during peak season as well, but again, we just want to let you know that there are options to take your clients off season and give them a great experience that is going to be much more meaningful than what they may experience during a high season. So you're going to see a brand score as we go through our accommodations. We kind of, have the score based on, do they represent, right, the location that you say this much better, like the heritage of the location, do they have sustainable practices in place? What are the amenities that they provide? Do they have a view? I mean, if you stay on the Amalfi Coast, you kind of need a view, right? What's their story? Are they just owned by a foreign entity, right? And nothing about ownership, and what do they do in terms of food and culinary? It's very hard for us to give a 5, but even if they have a 3 or a 4, right? For us personally, they are really on brand and really online with our values. So some of our favorite accommodations, and again, this list, please understand, this list will be different during the high season, okay? So this list is specifically put together to consider those off-season months. Not all of them are open. Like, for example, Hotel Margherita, they're open, they kind of change every year, but they're open through January, they close February, and then they open again in March. Well, some like La Minervetta, which I'm sure maybe it's the one that out of all of them, some of you may know. It's an amazing, amazing hotel. We had the pleasure of staying there last February. It's in Sorrento, it's in Marina Grande. You can walk down the stairs and get all the way to your restaurants. But, a room here during high season, 1, it's impossible to get because they have a very small number of rooms. 2, it's super expensive. And if you go during, like, it's almost hard to get anything. Yeah, we can go to the slide. During the peak season, again, availability, it's almost always an issue, and it's hard to get anything for less than 1,000, 1,500, sometimes 2,000, depending on the room. But during the low season, you can stay here for like 400 a night, 350 if you're lucky, right? So we really love these hotels. It's all about nature and sea. It has 12 rooms. It's art, and again, everything is bringing the inside out. So all of the colors, the white and the blues. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious to know if anybody, feel free to put it on the chat, if anybody has had the pleasure of visiting or staying at this accommodation. But it is, quite unique. And again, it's in Sorrento, which during the off, it's in Marina Grande. So you're still talking about walking maybe half a mile to reach the center of town, but you can, through a staircase, you can reach Marina Grande, so you have access to the water and the restaurants. During the off season, it's a good location that gives you more than you would get maybe if you stayed in Praiano or Vietri sul Mare. Every room has a sea view, which I absolutely love. They have an infinity pool, vegetable garden. They do this thing where they give you complimentary, like afternoon, or I can't speak French, so I need appetizers type food. So, even all the guests get to mingle with the staff. They have the staircase to Marina Grande. The elevator takes you down to a point, but then there's a staircase. There's no way. So just for accessibility, keep that in mind. There's no way to get the elevator all the way down. And you're 5 minutes by car from the historic center of Sorrento, or you can even walk. It's not that far of a walk. Who is it perfect for? Our lovers, right? But really, I mean, anybody. It's a great little hotel. And yeah, one of the must experiences is to walk down to Marina Grande, have a fresh seafood meal at this hole in the wall called Ristorante Porta Marina. They're a family of fishermen. They have the little boat out there. They go fishing every day. And then maybe try to make the hike back up to burn off some of the calories. That's a bonus point. And La Minervetta is open year round. So Hotel Margherita is another great 4-star hotel. It's located in Praiano, which, can you please enable the chat function for us all? Can we please do that?
I don't know. Let's see.
Does anybody know how to do that? That's a better question.
Great question. That may be.
If you click on chat, what happens?
That's not that.
No. Okay.
No. Oh, here we go. Wait. I got it.
Hey,
Everyone. Yes.
Got it.
Hey,
okay.
We got to win. All right.
Please let us know if the chat has been enabled. Thank you, Robin. Hotel Margherita is in the small little village of Praiano, which, if most of you know Tracy, you know this town, and it's an amazing, like, I wouldn't say visually from the outside is the most beautiful, but their staff, the owner is always there. I've got the phone number of the owner on my WhatsApp that I can always reach out to, and just the level of service, their food, why is it not letting me go? Their food, they have a slow food restaurant, so it's actually one of my favorite restaurants in Praiano. And because when you go there, you have Italians that are coming from Naples, from Sorrento, maybe on a Sunday, right? And they're choosing to have their meals there. And it's just a great value. They have some larger family rooms. They also have a 3-bedroom apartment that it's adjacent. And Praiano is divided into 2 sections. There's the lower section of Praiano, which is where you have your Church of San Gennaro, which is, in my humble opinion, the most beautiful inside of the Amalfi Coast, with all the mosaics, and it's often this beautiful piazza full of mosaics and just 360-degree views. Then you have the road of the Amalfi Coast, and then you have the upper part of Praiano. This is located in the upper part, but it's a 5-minute walk down. And the cool thing about Praiano, they always tell people, don't just look at it this way. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing with my hand. Look at it this way, right? The cool thing about Praiano is not just going from up to bottom or bottom up. It's actually going through the tiny little alleyways that have the little ceramics into the wall. There's some artisans, that don't even speak English, that have the little shops there. So Praiano kind of needs to be discovered slowly through those, inner streets, rather than just walking, through the staircase or through the road, straight up and down. So yeah, this is another great restaurant that we love. And again, service 100%. Una Villa Bed and Breakfast. So this small bed and breakfast only has 5 rooms, and it's not right in the center of Amalfi. It's about a 15-minute walk from the center of Amalfi. It's a little bit up, as you may be able to see from some of the photos here. The cool thing about working with those kind of luxury small boutique bed and breakfasts is they'll open for you, right? Even if during the off season, maybe they just open when they get reservations, but it's amazing because you get all the attention for yourself. So it's another great alternative for, again, small boutique accommodations for people that want to be close to action, because Amalfi still does have plenty of action during this off-season months, but obviously, you can visit the Duomo and it's not going to be overpacked. And yeah, about 15-20 minutes walk to reach the center, and one of the must experiences is to get your breakfast in bed. Villa Antica Macina. This is actually one of the first bed and breakfasts that we discovered when we went to hike the Path of the Gods. They only have 3 rooms, so for a group or a family, it's a great option. One of the rooms does have like 2 bedrooms, so you could almost say 4, but of course, the apartment that has the 2 bedrooms, you wouldn't want to give to. Yes, you guys can have the presentation at the end. We will send a link to the recording to everybody. So Villa Antica Macina is located, and all of those are hyperlinked, by the way, so they'll take you straight to their website. As you're gonna see, for a place like this, their website is not the best. It's an Italian woman, it's her and her son, and the town of Nocelle. Let's talk about that really quick. It's located 1,000 steps above Positano. If you were to walk down, I think we did it in like 20 minutes. Walking back up, would take, most people maybe like 40 minutes to an hour. Of course, taxi, transfer, right? But the cool thing about Nocelle, tiny bitty town, it's one of the 2 entrances to the Path of the Gods. It's no cars, right? So you get all the way up, and you get a donkey that helps carry, donkey that is your porter, helps carrying the bags, and you just start walking. It's literally a 5-minute walk from where the car can get you to this accommodation. It's a very small town. There's 3 restaurants. So usually when we send travelers there, they get to try all of them, but all of them are great. And all of them are open for the most part year round. So who is this accommodation perfect for? Active travelers. They want to have that access to the Path of the Gods. And this is an accommodation that even during the high season does not get busy, right? Yes, you're going to have the hikers, the day trippers that come in for the hike, but come on, it's Nocelle. It's got, 3 restaurants, so it doesn't have that many bed and breakfasts, and it doesn't have real full hotels to host people. So one of my favorite places for your active crowds, it would be a great option. Great views as well. And Amalia, the owner, it's great. She comes and cooks breakfast for you every morning. She'll get little groceries, so it's just, again, that personal connection, right, that you get to have with the locals who live, built, and have been here for generations. Oh, she says chat is still disabled. Maybe direct to Q&A instead. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, guys, we're webinar number 4, and we're still figuring out the technology. Okay, let's talk really quick about favorite experiences. Like I said, I'm moving a little bit quickly, but that way, hopefully, we can give you some time for questions at the end. Some of our favorite experiences, but not, that's not all of them, you went too fast, our slow food cooking class in Praiano, of course, the Path of the Gods hike, a winery tour and tasting in Vietri sul Mare, and an e-bike plus farm-to-table experience in Sorrento. We wanted to show you experiences that, again, could be easily combined, right, with some of those off-season itineraries, because a boat, it's not something that we would want to add to a winter itinerary. We can always add it as a surprise if the weather, cooperates, but it's not something that, we would encourage people, especially because if they go to Capri, like I said, there's construction everywhere. So slow food cooking class in Praiano. This is probably my most favorite experience on the Amalfi Coast, along with the hike. Giacomo, who is this younger gentleman pictured here, he was at one point the president of Slow Food Italia. So for those of you who are not familiar with this organization, there are global organizations that, again, is promoting. It started as a reaction to the first McDonald's that ever opened in Rome. That's the camera. Oh, that's the camera. Yeah, I'm looking here. To counter, fast food. So, and Giacomo is amazing. He takes you, through a walk, through the village. So before you get to this incredible location in which you do an open air cooking class, if the weather allows, he takes you to a cheese farm, a local winery, the little market on the days when they have the market. So it's a very slow, this experience is about 4 to 5 hours. And again, it's another great way to meet some of those locals that are resilient and still working the land to grow food the slow food way. So highly recommend. It can be done as a private or as a small group experience. The Path of the Gods hike, the Sentiero degli Dei. So the full hike is 7.5 miles. So, it's not that bad for active people that want to do it. It can be done in one day, right? 5 to 7 hours, or as we mentioned earlier, you can spend a night in one of the mid villages and split it between 2 or even 3 days if you wanted to. It is moderate to challenging, but it's by no means inaccessible. Of course, physicality, it's always something to be considered, right, for this, but we can talk about that on a case-by-case basis. Total elevation gain, you're about 5,000 feet. So you can only imagine when you get up there, you can see the entire coastline on a clear day. You can see Capri. So very, very beautiful. And yeah, of course, we recommend, I mean, it can be done by yourself if you know where to go, but we always recommend having a guide that knows the places, they know the weather, right? They know the shorter instead of shorter hike available. Yes, that's supposed to say shorter. Do you want to talk about this since you've done it too?
Yeah, so this this winery is an incredible place in Vietri sul Mare, which is at the very end of the Amalfi Coast, what's considered the Amalfi Coast. And so this place is on this gorgeous terrace that overlooks the city of Vietri sul Mare. And it's run by, what is her name?
A woman.
Yeah.
Roberta.
Roberta. So she is, I don't know, you know a little more about this.
Well,
I don't remember.
no, Roberta, Patrizia. It says right here, baby.
Oh.
Patrizia. She rescued this vineyard. So this vineyard was in complete disrepair. Again, woman, she did not have a background in winemaking, but she fell in love with this place and she brought it back to life. The vineyard, she got it like in, I think it was 20 years ago that she turned this property into what is now like one of the most beautiful vineyards, because a lot of the vineyards are, again, on this terrace cliffs, and some of them are inland, but here you get the view of the hills, the terrace vineyards, the view of Vietri that you can see, and the view of the sea. So you kind of get the best of all the worlds that the Amalfi Coast offers. And yeah, this experience can be super customized, because you can start with actually a guided walk in Vietri sul Mare, which is known as the town, even though ceramics are all over the Amalfi Coast and the region of Campania, Vietri sul Mare is really the hub, right? Every street is just a color of ceramics. So you can take a walk there. We could do even a ceramic workshop, and then you can walk all the way up to the vineyard. Again, physical ability is a question, because you are walking, as you can see, on a slope. But of course, the car could take all the way up to the vineyard, and then based on that, we can make the walk through the vineyard shorter. And then here we can do just the tasting, the wine tasting, the lunch. I had my first and best like raw lemon salad here. And I came home and I tried to make it, and there's nothing like the Amalfi lemons and the thick, sweet skin. Or we can also do a cooking class. Again, it can be very, very customized. It's available as a private or as a small group experience. Because Vietri sul Mare, again, this is an experience that can be done during the high season, but if you have somebody stay in Traiano and they're going all the way to Vietri sul Mare, and they get stuck in traffic, you gotta account for an hour and 45 minutes potentially in the car each way, right? So if this experience is high on your list, consider having your clients stay closer to Vietri sul Mare. And then of course, with the opening of the Salerno airport, that's also making the access to that unknown side of the Amalfi Coast a little bit easier. If there's any questions. Have you done this one? Okay. E-bike experience. This is also this is in Sorrento. Actually, it's in Piano di Sorrento. So it's in the hills behind Sorrento, but it starts from Sorrento. So what's great about this experience, if you have clients staying in Sorrento, they don't have to get in the car for a day, right? And they can, this could be done with the e-bike, which is my favorite, because if you're, drinking limoncello, drinking wine, tasting all the cheese, making pizza, I like to personally move, but of course it can be done just with a private transfer to it. This farm is really, what's the weather like? Okay, we'll touch on that in a second. This farm is a really incredible story because it caught on fire. It was destroyed I was there last in 2019, and a year prior to that, they had a fire. But, you know, the owner, the family, they're so resilient. They built it back up from the ashes, and they have animals, they have beautiful lemon groves. They come, I don't want to ruin all the, I guess I can tell you, but then for the clients that can be left as a surprise, they come and get you from where you leave the bikes with a little ape, which is this typical little, you know, two-seater cars, like super
The
tiny.
three-wheeled things, yeah.
Yeah, and you get to ride through these tiny little alleyways that you couldn't even stuck your hand out, or you would hit, you know, the wall. It's just an amazing guy, great entertainer. When they do it as a small group, there's usually a maximum of like 10 people. And then after you know, you see the farm, you walk through the lemon groves, you taste the limoncello, the olive oil, the cheese, you get to see how mozzarella cheese is made. Then you get back in the ape and you go to this tiny little forno, like literally you can fit 4 people in it at a time, and you get to make pizza with an old residence. So I wouldn't say it's a cooking class, right? Pizza can be made pretty quickly. You roll the dough out, but it's cool because you get to end the experience. You made this pizza and then you eat at a beautiful outdoor garden if the weather allows, and again, privately or with the small group that you've met. What's the weather like? I will be in Capri for 3 days and Amalfi Coast 4 days on October 7th. The weather, I can't tell you. This fall has been way rainier than the last few years. We all know what's happening with the climate, so it's really hard to predict because, yeah, we've had more rain this September than we've had, like, you know, all year almost. It was flooded even this morning as we were taking our children to school. So in October, typically, the weather on the Amalfi Coast, you can still swim if you wanted to. It's in the 70s, right? So depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from Florida, it may be too cold. But depending on where you're coming from, October, it's still very beautiful. It's starting that peak season of that is really all the way September. It's one of the highest season. It started to even out a little bit. But unfortunately, if you've been paying attention to the news, there's a lot of flooding right now happening all over Italy. The Mother Nature just responding, you know, to some of the environmental challenges that are occurring right now. But as a general rule of thumb, in October, the weather, it's in the 70s. And again, as I mentioned, in February, right, if you get a rainy day, you can get temperatures as high as the 60. Otherwise, you're looking in the 50s, right? So it's still not like freezing cold. Again, I'm not a weatherman, so I can't tell you 100%, but that's definitely the norm. Let's see, I think we're doing good on time, so we can answer some of the other questions. Can you recommend 5-star luxury properties that are off season in the Amalfi Coast? That is a great question. Most of the 5-star properties that you know, whether they're Virtuoso, you know, Borgo Sant'Andrea, like obviously the ones in Positano, they are closed. So La Minervetta, even though it's a 4-star, it really, I mean, it's a 5-star.
Yeah.
It has the amenity. They don't have like a full restaurant per se, but they you know, they offer the snacks and you can walk to restaurants. So but yeah, a lot of the bigger properties, I'm gonna think about it a little bit more, and we'll do some more research to see if there's any 5-star properties that are open off season, but most of the ones that everybody knows are closed. Yeah, I love the e-bike experience. Great. Yeah, keep the questions coming because I think we're doing good on time. So some of the other experiences that we offer in and around the Amalfi Coast, and again, if you have any questions, we can hop on another call, share some of our Travelify itineraries, food, wine, and sea, buffalo mozzarella experience. I don't know if any of you know of a farm called Vannullo. It's way further south, closer to Salerno. So again, timing, and if you're doing it off season, much less time in the car. During the high season, people are coming for 3 nights. It's hard to fit it in because of the time in the car, but it's a really cool experience. Because people ask me if buffalo mozzarella really comes from buffalo. So I'm like, yes, it really comes from buffalo. So it's really different experience to just the typical, you know, mozzarella making. We do, of course, limoncello workshops and tastings. We have one in Positano, one in Praiano, and it's run by the same guy and his wife. So depending on where your clients are staying, they can do either or. Cooking class in Capri. We work with an amazing young couple that they do a cooking class in their private home, and you get to walk through the gardens, and it's an off the beaten path experience in Capri. Boat excursions around the coast and or to Capri. Again, if you're taking the boat to go around the island of Capri is one thing. If you're getting off for a couple hours as a day tripper, unless you hire a guide, you hire a driver, and you get out of Capri and go into Ana Capri, where you even get more authentic boutiques and things like that, we wouldn't recommend, right? But of course, during the high season, going around the island, we can talk about the Blue Grotto in a second, but it's really beautiful. There's a lot of other caves, and sometimes advisors, ask me, hey, why don't we get these clients a bigger boat? Well, we can get a yacht if they want, but you're not going to be able to get near the caves, right? You're not going to be able to go close to the caves during the warmer season. Obviously, jump in and snorkel. If the bigger the boat, the further you have to be from the coastline. And then keep in mind the €100 fee if they're getting off in Capri without going through a restaurant. Guided hike in Monte Solaro, that's of course a highlight. It is not off the beaten path. I mean, if you hike rather than take the cable car, right? It's a little bit more off the beaten path, and if you do it off season, absolutely. But during the high season, it is the popular hike to do in Capri. And then a winery tasting and lunch at Tenuta di San Francesco, which we can combine. That is not on the Amalfi Coast. It's in Campania, but it's way before. But people that go, for example, from Rome to the Amalfi Coast and they want to go to Pompeii, that is a great stop that we often combine with Pompeii. It's about 30 minutes from Pompeii.
This is a good question. When it comes to planning, how far back from departure do you recommend for high and off season? Do you want to address that really quick? Because that's a big thing that we come into a lot with the Amalfi Coast.
Yes. During the off season, if we're planning January for February, probably fine, right? We would be able to fulfill that request. During the high season, for the Amalfi Coast, ideally, you really want that 8 months to a year out, right? That's like the sweet spot. We tried not to take anything less than 3 months out during the high season. Why? We can't get you at any of those places that we just talked about, right? Because they have a small number of rooms, so they're going to be booked out. Prices are going to be higher. So during the high season, and I would say the high season, even though there's some shoulder in there, it's from Easter, right? Usually all of the hotels reopen right before Easter, right? All the way through October, right? Of course, with the peak seasons being May, June, July, September, right? August is busy too, but most people are now getting into the common sense that being there in August while kids are out of school, it is hot and, just way too hot and overcrowded. People are starting to move away from that. Does that answer your question, Eleanor?
We'll go ahead.
Okay. What else? Yeah, and again, just some of the other experiences that we can do, the guided tour of Capri and the Gardens of Augusto, visit to the Coral Museum in Ravello, but not just entering, and buy the souvenir, actually getting to know the shop owners, getting to know where all of this jewelry and artifacts come from. So making it more than just, a mere shopping experience. Guided tour of Pompeii and Ercolano, and guided visit to Cetara and Vietri sul Mare, which are two of my favorite little towns on the Amalfi Coast. Okay, so again, this is no rule, it's just some, recommendation, just some ideas, right? If you're wondering, okay, how long people should stay. The reality is that most people stay 3 nights on the Amalfi Coast. And with 3 nights during the high season, they want to do a boat tour to Capri, right? Maybe they'll choose, they want to do a day where they have a private driver that is going to take them to Ravello, Positano, Amalfi, right? So they can get off and kind of have leisure time. And then maybe they're doing a few hours of Path of the Gods hike. That's done, right? So a lot of the other things that we talked about that are slower, more immersive, they're all designed off the table, right? With your typical 3 nights. So just some food for thoughts, for a food and wine itinerary, and this can all be mixed and matched, of course. Maybe doing 6 nights, maybe incorporating Naples, which in the winter would be amazing because now you get this amazing city. Again, it will be busier than the Amalfi Coast because it's a city, but not nearly as busy as during the high season. So you can spend a couple of nights in Naples. It's an incredible city that deserves its own webinar. Food tour of Naples, try everything from babas, sfogliatelle, you know, the birthplace of pizza, and then maybe moving to the Amalfi Coast, whether it's three nights in Praiano or in Nocelle, or combining it with a hike, doing the slow food experience, hands down, right? And that's your day. It's 4 to 5 hours. Some people spend more time because they really connect with these people and they become friends. Limoncello workshop, winery tour and tasting. If somebody's looking for more adventure and wellness, maybe they can combine the Path of the Gods, so 3 nights, whether it's Nocello or Bomerano, with 3 nights in Ischia, which again deserves its own time. But in Ischia, as you know, as many of you probably already know, largest amount of natural hot springs in Europe. So you can have thermal baths experience, mud baths, massage, right? Everything to kind of rejuvenate the body, especially if they went hiking the days before. And then leisure, honeymoons, right? Again, we can stay more than 4 nights, but if you're just sending your clients to the Amalfi Coast, I would say the very minimum to scratch the surface would be 4 nights, just so you can incorporate, yes, go to Positano, go here, but then do some of those more immersive experiences that we've talked about. I think that's it. Did good on time. Was I too fast?
No, it was thorough. Very good.
So yeah, we can open it up to questions. Our next webinar would be on Venice, which is another hotspot that, you know, deserves to be discovered the right way, the sensorial way, right? But yeah, if you guys have any, I keep looking at the wrong screen. If you guys have any questions, this is a great time to ask.
Great. And so guys, after this webinar, what we're going to do, which is something we always do with these webinars, is we'll send you, you'll be getting a brief survey just to kind of give us your feedback, as well as give us some feedback on other destinations that you would like to hear about, so that we can have food for thought as we design our schedule for more of these webinars and generate content around them. And then we'll also include a link to our travel advisor introductory form, which will basically put you in touch directly with us if you either have clients that are actively looking to travel to these areas, including anywhere in Italy, or if you just want to get to know a little bit more about us and how we can work with you as a DMC. Yeah. And then the link to this recording as well. So you'll have access to this presentation.
Yes, and I forgot one thing because I mentioned it and then I never went back to it. Really quick note about the blue grotto, right? The Grotta Azzurra, because I think it's very important. This is beyond the off season. Off season, we can probably get you, if it's a beautiful day, we can get you to the Grotta Azzurra. During the peak season, unfortunately, it's become a tourist trap. There is no legal way of skipping the lines of boats, right? The illegal way to do that is to bring a stack of cash, right? Hoping that your skipper knows the guy that it's getting you from your boat to the little wooden boat so that you can go, and it's also based on the tide, so that you can get into the Blue Cave for, you know, five minutes and then come back out. So I know that's a question for a lot of clients. There's so many other beautiful caves around that we take people to, but we just let your clients know if they want to do it, they can. Usually once they get there and they get in line, they're like, no, let's maybe come back around later. If the line is that long, we're going to skip it. And or they bring a stack of cash and hoping that they can get there. But we are not you know, guaranteeing that, because we don't want to overcharge your clients for something that we know it's illegal in the first place. Off season, let's talk about it. If the weather is good, chances are we can make it happen. I did have the privilege to swim in it very long time ago, and that was amazing. But it was only me and the guy that took me there. It was an old man. It was an old guy. It wasn't a young guy.
All right.
Okay, I'm getting in trouble now. Great.
Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. And we really appreciate your support for this type of travel. We look forward to working with you. And thank you, Tracy, as always, for the introduction and the opportunity to expand our network and find great alignment with this type of off the beaten path travel.